This is Rick Roll for Rule Investment Media, speaking on behalf of the Mining Journal Select London Investment Conference, July 1st and 2nd. We're doing these interviews in an attempt to help you, the attendee, allocate your time and your capital more efficiently during the 2 days of the conference. During the 2 days of the conference, we are going to introduce you to more people and more subjects than you can possibly comprehend in the 2 days that we give you to do it. So we're trying to introduce you to the speakers and the exhibitors at the conference ahead of the conference so that you can allocate your time and capital more effectively. Today, I have Chris Showalter from Lifezone Metals. Disclosure of conflict of interest. I am a shareholder and an investor in the company. So if it sounds like I'm predisposed to the issuer, understand that's because I am predisposed to the issuer. Chris, first of all, thank you for your efforts on behalf of shareholders, including myself. And thank you, too, for your sponsorship of the Mining Journal Select Conference. Welcome.
No, thanks, Rick. Always a pleasure and always great to take the time to talk to you. So thank you.
Tell me something about your background. Tell us how you came to be doing, why you're at Lifezone, and frankly, why we should care about your questions, your answers to the questions I'm about to ask you.
Yeah, I mean, my background, traditional kind of start out as an investment banker at Goldman Sachs, 10-year tour of duty in New York, and then took a little bit of career risk. So decided to resign as an American, moved to Zimbabwe and worked for a Russian investment bank. So that was my introduction to Africa. So no small career move, and then really worked there for a number of years, and then started working with Hanneman Partners, which was a boutique investment broker out of London when they first started. I really got into PGMs being in Zimbabwe. That was my intro to metals and mining, and my first introduction to Lifezone was when Brian Gilbertson introduced me to Keith Liddell, who was the founder of Lifezone. Brian Gilbertson had just put together the Setabelo Platinum project in South Africa through a consolidation. He said, "Hey, we got this other technology we invested in as part of this investment group, and as you know, Keith Liddell's got this hydromet process, and we think Zim's perfect because it has no built-out smelting and refining, so it's a perfect landscape for us. So why don't I send Keith up there?" That was my introduction to Keith. Fast forwarding, came on board full-time in 2017 to kind of pursue that. So like a good investment banker, your off-ramp is usually a client or something you get a glint in your eye for, and Lifezone was definitely that for me.
So you have background in mining and metals, you have background in finance, and you have background in Africa too, which is handy. Let's go into Lifezone now. We have a couple things maybe three things to talk about. Some fairly prominent investors and backers worldwide. A wonderful deposit, the Kabanga. I should disclose I was a former Sutton shareholder, so I've been around this damn deposit for 3 decades. So let's talk about the deposit too, and then let's talk about the beneficiation technology. Let's start with the deposit because this is truly a world-class nickel deposit. Let's start there.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, this is one of these rare tier 1 projects, and I get a lot of questions as why is this project still kicking around? Like, what happened? Why didn't Glencore, Barrick, Sutton, Anglo, even BHP back in the 90s? Like, why was this never unlocked? And I think part of that question or that answer is when you look at BHP when they had it and they walked away, Glencore really came in as the controlling shareholder. But this project, it never had the infrastructure to ship a heavy bulk concentrate from Western Tanzania to smelters in Sudbury and refiners in Nikkelverk in Norway. So it was always Glencore's next big development project for their pipeline, but it had to fit into their operational footprint, and it needed the infrastructure there. So fast forwarding, what we did, we said, all right, well, Tanzania's committed over the past 5 years to build out a massive blueprint of infrastructure to really unlock a lot of these big capital projects, rail, hydroelectric power. So that's step 1. Step 2 is we kind of flipped the whole business model upside down, saying, with our hydromet expertise, we can provide the ability to beneficiate and process locally, removing those heavy logistical transport costs of getting a concentrate to other parts of the world. And the nickel notoriously, no one's ever answered this for me effectively, has a notoriously low payability, much lower than it should be. So to avoid that low penalizing payability and to get high recoveries in country, we were able to completely transform the entire economic model. And I think that kind of segued into once we controlled the project and we looked for a partner, that was the segue for BHP to say, aha, okay, you guys, this would be interesting to talk to you because you have a tier one asset. We see the clean processing strategy you guys are looking at. And we got it out of Glencore's hands. So that was a bit of the coup right there, was being able to unlock the asset by getting it into a new share ownership and getting government to issue a new long-term mining license.
So let's talk about this black box, this hydromet technology that other people either haven't thought of or perfected. Tell me why it's applicable to this project, and tell me too. I realize it's impossible to do it briefly, but give me a sort of a 30,000-foot view of why it might work.
Yeah, so the hydromet flow sheet we're applying at Kabanga is really, this is a pretty vanilla hydromet flow sheet by comparable standards. This is, first steps pressure oxidation, widely used in the industry. Gold mining companies, specifically Barrick, have really somewhat perfected the use of pressure oxidation. So we're utilizing that first step. And then there's a chlorination filtration step that's really where the hydromet know-how kind of comes in. And that's really where we apply our intellectual property, our expertise. But we get out of the first few steps, we get to high 90s recoveries. And really that last step is electrowinning. So right now we're looking at producing copper cathode, nickel cathode, and cobalt rounds. So the flow sheet we're applying at Kabanga is, every unit operation of this design is done at scale somewhere in the industry. So this is not our more complex hydromet patented expertise. That's primarily in the precious metal space. Applying that to base metals is a much simpler process. We're going to look at some patents for this process, but this is, I think it was quite easy for us to get the interest in investors like BHP when they interrogated the engineering design and flow sheet, because this is we're not breaking new technology ground here. This is just providing smarter, more innovative, more optimized engineering and design to existing unit operations that are done. So yeah, I mean, I could go in a bunch of different directions, but for a later interview.
I've found in my career that in development stage projects like this, increases in market capitalization are really a function of answering unanswered questions. And they normally need to be answered sequentially. So tell me what the most important unanswered question that's in front of you is. Tell me approximately how long it's going to take to answer it. And tell me how much money it's going to take to answer that question, whether or not you have it.
So how would I put this? I'd say the answer to that is we have two very defined catalysts and milestones coming up. Number one, we are negotiating an offtake agreement, as we've stated publicly. That's going to be with, we've finalized that down to two candidates who are going to be two of the pedigreed off-taking partners that the market would expect we would be doing a big deal with. So that is pending. That's going to be a significant deliverable to the market, and investors are expecting that announcement in the near term. That's number one. And second, it's the countdown to the DFS. We deliver the DFS on time, on budget. Right now, we're tracking towards end of Q3. That timeline has not changed over the past 6 months, so we are on time. We currently, have cash in place to see well through the DFS. So, we're not in a intensive capital raising trajectory like you see in traditional big capex projects. If BHP exercises their option, the equity investment they would make to go from 17 to 60% would be substantial, and that could cover the bulk of phase one's capex. So we, if we do project finance as a complement to this, we could be in a unique position where we could be in there'd be a minimal requirement from an equity capital raise, and it'd be well within our ability to draw down the offtake to fill that gap. So a really unique pathway we have, having the offtake and having BHP on the horizon at the conclusion of the DFS. So those are the two key catalysts, and if we deliver on those as management, we're really delivering for shareholders.
So investors, I guess, need to focus on the fact that you're involved in a process that will answer most of the unanswered questions. by the end of Q3, which is to say the definitive feasibility study.
Yeah, I
Uh,
would say so. Yeah, I'd say we have
uh,
a really clear story.
I guess too that feasibility study has to be good enough that it passes the muster by the largest mining company in the world. Too
Absolutely.
often, feasibility studies only have to please the underwriter, who is inclined to generate a fee from saying yes to the feasibility study. In your
Mhm.
particular case, the customer has to write a check as opposed to cash a check. Um,
Yeah,
but
and I've
uh,
learned a lot about internal peer reviews through our relationship with BHP. So we know their hurdles and milestones, and we're heavily involved in making sure we meet those. But I think we have quite a bit of confidence in the nature of the study underway and the results that'll come place.
I know it sounds like editorial, but every time I'm involved in a small company that has a big company providing adult supervision, I'm delighted by the fact when I walk through the big company that there's 200 or 250 earth scientists who are employed on my projects but are paid by them.
Well, that's something that, I mean, it's a really good point because I don't think people hear a lot. I mean, we're in not confidential process, but I mean we are in a highly collaborative process with BHP, but they have a whole entire fleet and bench of specialists. And if we need a geotech, we need a compliance specialist, anyone, they're seconding people in. And that's enormously valuable because we are a much smaller company, but we have the entire repertoire of their bench to draw on. And I think it's daunting, it's overwhelming, and it's a lot of work for us to keep up. But by the time we get to DFS, we're going to have a very strong understanding of the quality of the DFS and the ability for BHP to make a very informed decision. And that's why we committed to a very open process, which you can go the other way. I mean, you could basically say, okay, invest, sayonara, I'll see you when the feasibility is done and we'll take a peek. We've done the exact opposite, and that's a lot of work.
Realistically, I guess the value proposition, assuming things go well, is that you'll have effectively a 40% carried interest with minimal additional financial, at least upfront financial contribution. Based on the existing documentation, whether or not it's a PFS or a PEA or anything like that,
Mhm.
uh, what is the indicated net present value of that 40% carry?
So right now, so the DFS will obviously dictate the
Sure.
updated NPV. What I can point to and what I can say now is we have increased the mine size, so there is going to be an adjustment from our last public statement. The previous NPV at 2.2 million tons per annum, which is the previous feasibility study done by Barrick and Glencore. I mean, that was at previous nickel prices. I think, well, I want to be careful. I don't want to quote their unpublished DFS. Um, I think if you look at the ranges right now, if you look at publicly available information, I mean, this should be a multi-billion-dollar NPV
Right.
project.
Right.
And I think I can fairly say that. And that's just really goes back to the inherent quality of the grade, the ore body, the amount of work that's been done. I mean, there's been over 620 kilometers drilled on this asset. I mean, it's just phenomenally understood. No complexities, easily floatable material, no deleterious nasties in there. I mean, this is really our hydromet team has really been, I'll actually quote one of our head metallurgists from an internal call we had this morning, and he basically said it. He's actually worried because everything has gone way too well in terms of our piloting. He's like, it never goes without some sort of hiccup or dilemma or something you have to fix. And he's like, knock on wood, we haven't had anything. This has just been a phenomenally successful piloting campaign so far. So I hope the team can keep that up because that's really going to keep us on track to deliver a very, very, in my view, positive DFS.
Well, I'm obviously a shareholder, so I'm obviously excited. For people who are less familiar with the company that who specifically at the company might Mining Journal Select attendees
Mhm.
contact, and how might they contact that person?
Yeah, so the easiest way, if you go to our website, and then you can obviously contact us through the information portal of the website, but ask specifically for Evan Young as our head of investor relations, and then you can also address to me, Chris Showalter. We monitor that very actively. That's the best way to get a hold of us. So myself and Evan always happy to speak to any potential investors And you can get our emails directly from there as well. Mine is chris.showalter@lifezonemetals.com and evan.young@lifezonemetals.com.
Well, that's an important answer, ladies and gentlemen. The buck stops at the top. Chris, thank you for your ongoing efforts on behalf of shareholders, as I said before. I look forward to seeing you in London, July 1st and 2nd at the Mining Journal Select Conference. It'll be a pleasure to have you there.
Thanks, Rick. Looking forward to it. And yeah, thanks again for your time. Always appreciate it.